Okay, and here we are again, Rothio. Really nice to see you again. We're matching today. I love how we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A yellow jacket too. Those are the colors.
Fantastic. Hi, Gina.
Hello.
Welcome to our space.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here, to be honest. From the very first moment I saw the new podcast, I thought, this is interesting. So thank you very much for your invitation.
No, great. It's really great to have you here. And so, Gina, tell us, where are you at the moment?
I'm in the north of Italy, northeast of Italy, in a small town called Treviso, which is the homeland for tiramisu. This is where tiramisu was invented. And it's also, yes, and it's also the homeland of Prosecco. I don't know if Prosecco, I mean, yeah, you probably know Prosecco as well. So,
Wow.
Spritz, that's another trendy cocktail. So, about an hour and a half from the Dolomites, half an hour from Venice. So I can't complain. It's a lovely place to be.
Yeah, fantastic location. Wow.
Mm.
All right. But you didn't start there. Tell us a little bit. Whereabouts have you come from?
Right. Okay. So I'm from Montevideo. Guess the country. So that's.
No, I'm going to let you tell me.
Come on, Daniel.
Well, I'm going to give you a clue. They're playing against Italy tonight in rugby.
Oh,
well,
hold on. Tell me the name again. Tell me the name again.
Montevideo is the capital city of Uruguay.
Ah, there we go.
Okay. No, I mean my clue wasn't that helpful. Yeah, so I'm from Montevideo.
Right. Okay. And how long have you been in Italy, and how and why Italy?
Yeah, well, it's a long story. How long? Well, so yeah, I moved to Italy in 2000, the year 2000, with the millennium, after the millennium, all the millennium parties and all that.
Yeah.
January 2000. And before moving to Italy, I was living in the UK, and before then I was in Brazil. So it wasn't a straight move to Italy, but it wasn't a planned move that I had either. I mean, it all started when in 1998 I decided to take a few months off, like half a gap year, and went to London, and then stayed, and then so before then I was in Brazil, and then I decided to go to London. And Brazil, actually, I was in Brazil, but it's I was on the border between Brazil and Uruguay, so I would commute.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a full immersion in like full Brazilian immersion, but I would spend the day in Brazil and sleep in Uruguay in the evening. At that time I was in the north of Uruguay. So yeah, so life brought me here basically. It wasn't planned, and there is a saying in Spanish, I don't know if they say the same in Guatemala and Costa Rica, but in Uruguay say, no te gusta la sopa, dos platos. Like, if you don't like soup, so you get 2 plates of soup. Because I remember before moving to Italy, actually had been here as a tourist and said, lovely place, lovely country, blah, blah, fantastic, but I would never, ever live here.
Yeah.
And then
famous last words. Yeah.
Yeah. So so as I said, I was in the UK, and then so I think I can tell you this. I met someone from Italy, and and I said, well, he was there for work experience, and then he had to come back, so because he was doing work for a year. And so before going back to Uruguay, I thought, well, maybe, actually he said, why don't you come and, stay for a couple of months, and that's how I ended up in Italy. Okay, now you know it.
And a couple of months turned into a couple of years, and a couple of years turned into a bit longer.
Couple
Yeah.
of
And then
decades.
it became 20 something years. Yeah,
Right.
and that story didn't kind of go anywhere, because at some point we split up, and that was an interesting point, because I think that, yeah, we had been like together for 6 years, we were about to marry, and then the story ends, and suddenly I realized that I thought, oh my God, I've got a life here, which I hadn't realized.
Yeah.
But what I'm gonna do, and people were asking me, friends were asking me, so are you gonna go back? Because it was quite shocking how things happened, and then I realized, and then I just gave myself some time to think, and I didn't want to make a decision, a habit decision. And I decided to stay because I had, apart from him, I also had a life. So I had a job,
Right.
I had friends,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, so I decided to stay. I gave myself more time, and then I stayed, and I realized that, I wanted to stay. And it's funny because then at that time I used to go back to Uruguay like almost every year. And then when after living for so long abroad, you don't belong to anywhere in it's like,
Right. Exactly. I know this feeling. After
yeah,
living abroad for so long, you don't feel like you belong to one place or another anymore. After a while, yeah.
not 100%. So I have to say,
Right.
I'm so jealous of people that have lived the entire life in one place. So sometimes I feel jealous.
But you could also say you belong everywhere.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
positive way. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, I know how I feel. I mean, I think this kind of, I mean, in line with what the title of your podcast. I feel borderless somehow. Like,
Yeah.
I have many traits, and none of the traits belong to one single place,
Yeah.
just to that place. So, and then, for example, when it comes to language, like accent, okay, so when I'm here, people say, oh, you've got a Spanish accent. And when I'm in Italy, I mean, in Uruguay, you say, you've got an Italian accent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, yeah, and things evolve, as well. So the country that you leave is not the country that, if you go back, it's not the same country. So,
Right. I had this experience. Yeah, when you are given the opportunity or the thought to move home again, um, and you suddenly realize, well, hang on a minute. Home is a very different place now than it was when I left.
mm,
The friends I had are not a group of friends anymore. They're all off doing their own thing in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. And so I wouldn't be going back to what I left. It would be it would be like moving to a new country again, starting all over again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. Like, I remember there were times that I went back, and there were even expressions and words that were new to me, because they all of a sudden started to use, or even
Yeah.
habits. Like in Uruguay, people drink a lot of mate, which is a kind of tea. I don't know if you've ever seen. Okay, so I'm not a typical
Yeah.
Uruguayan because I never had mate. I don't like it. But I
What?
remember, yeah, going. I remember once I went back and I saw people walking in the street with their thermal mate. It's like, that's so odd. And that was at that moment. From then onwards, it just became the norm, and it wasn't like that. Well, when I was there, for example, when I was a child, I really liked tango. But then, for being a child and then a teenager, it was so unusual, because that was considered like, oh, that's for the elderly. But then,
Yeah.
then it became super cool to dance tango. So, all these things, all these changes. So you see, you
Right.
don't belong. Yeah, you go back to your place, but you don't find the same comfort zone, let's say.
The same sense of belonging. Yeah, you don't find the same sense of belonging that you had before. No, I can appreciate, and I feel I've had the same feelings.
I think it happens to
Absolutely.
all of us, right? It would just experience. I just experienced that last week when I went back to Costa Rica, and I just felt like what's happening here. You know, everything's different. The country has changed a lot, and it's only been 8 years. But yes, it's very shocking, and it takes time to feel like, okay, so this is supposed to be familiar. This is supposed to be where I come from, but somehow I just found myself missing Guatemala a little bit. You know, like the
Yeah.
familiarity of Guatemala. Gina,
Mm.
you went back to Uruguay
Yeah.
recently with your family after how long?
12 years.
Wow. How was that?
Wow.
Yeah, I can't find a word to describe it. It was emotionally intense. I did find a completely different country almost after so long. And also because, I went back with my two kids. For them, it was the first time. For them, they said that it was the infinite adventure. That was the name they gave to this trip.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, because we went to Montevideo, but we also went to the countryside where my mom lives, and we stayed there on the farm for over 2 weeks. And that was exactly what I wanted them to experience, right? So, and they loved it. So contact with nature, and the animals, horse riding, fishing, and all of that. And but no, it was amazing. I mean, so in all these years, I always I kept in touch with my friends, and I occasionally saw them because some of them came here. My mom came every 2 years, so that was fun. But then there were some other friends and family that I hadn't seen for 12 years more. So so yeah, suddenly, I mean, the funny thing is that when you meet certain friends that you've been in touch but you haven't seen, it's just like last time was like yesterday, so you immediately click. It's like as time hadn't gone by. And but then the other thing was all these new habits and things that makes you feel like I don't belong here, or do I? Makes you doubt. So as I say, it's a mix of feelings.
Yeah. Very much.
So did you have a hard time? What was the hardest thing to adapt to right now? Like you went to Uruguay. Was it like the language, or was it the food? How people act? What was the hardest thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, don't know. I mean, I'm quite easygoing. So like, I mean, if I were Italian, I would complain about the food all the time, but I'm not. So I like trying new dishes. I don't mind, I'm not that picky about food or anything like that. My kids are, because they are Italian. Like for instance, the last day we happened to go to a restaurant, an Italian restaurant. And obviously, I wouldn't go to Italian restaurant abroad for all the reasons that we know. I prefer the local food and all that. But I don't know, everything was kind of full everywhere, so we ended up in that place. And they ordered spaghetti al ragu, so it's like spaghetti bolognese. And then my daughter said, "Mom, this is not spaghetti al ragu, blah 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 blah." She was, that's not me, okay. But like when traveling abroad, I have to be honest, like I've always traveled abroad, not, like I've always liked, and I've been to over 33 countries, more perhaps.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know the number because I have
Yeah.
challenge with a friend of mine, that's why.
That's
So we keep
wonderful.
counting. And I have to say that because I also, speak English, I never had the language barrier, and that's amazing. It's like, except when I went to Turkey, and they didn't, and I was in a very kind of off the beaten track place where they didn't speak English, I didn't speak Turkish, and we only had to rely on body language.
Oh,
But
wow.
somehow I managed to have a little conversation. So I mean, as I say, I'm quite adaptable. But when moving to Italy specifically, I found it difficult. The fact that people, for example, they are so proud about their own culture. So, but this is kind of very specific to Italy. They're very, very proud. So it's like Italian food is the best. What else? You know, we're the most beautiful country. And having travel so much, I know that, you know, every country has its own beauty and, you know, things that you know that are really lovely. So so it was hard for me to adapt to that, you know, idea.
Right.
Yeah, but then yeah, and also, you know, speaking the language wasn't a big problem, thank God. But
Yeah.
I think the problem was more understanding the various dialects. I still don't understand because there are too many. And I just picked up some expressions here and there. But
Yeah.
that's it. So yeah, I would say that's challenge. Not well, bureaucracy, documents. That's
Oh,
it.
oh, yeah,
No,
absolutely.
just trying to remember what, you know, that was a big challenge. And I think I'm gradually now remembering things like yeah, at the beginning it was pretty tough, I have to say.
Yeah.
Because you know, bureaucracy is insane, and I think, you know, in every country, not only here, but you know, when you have to go to
Absolutely.
place, trying to understand the documents, the name of the documents, and for example, one of the things here is that offices have different opening hours. Like in Uruguay, for example, all offices will be open from Monday to Friday from, I don't know, 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Here is
Right.
this office, Monday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday closed, Thursday
Yeah.
lunchtime, and then the other one. And it's crazy because you can't, you know, you have to be flexible with all the opening hours, for example.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a challenge. And also habits, like, you know, I remember the first time a student of mine said, "Oh, shall we go for a coffee?" I was like, "Yeah, that's very nice. You know, let's go for a coffee." So coffee in Uruguay means you go to a place, you have a coffee, sit down, you order coffee, spend an hour or two chatting.
Yeah.
So we went to this bar, coffee, espresso, yes. Okay, thank you, bye, see you next time. I was like, what was that?
What was that? What just happened?
You know, that kind of, you know, that's
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that's all.
Very
That
good.
caffeine, like high kick that they get from those strong coffees, like, okay, let's have a coffee, let's go. Like,
Yeah, let's go.
Very good. Hey, I wanted to go back a bit. You were border hopping between Uruguay and Brazil for a little while. Language? Were you dealing with two languages, or were you in the zone? Yeah. Okay. Great. So,
Yeah.
how many languages do you speak?
Okay, so 4.5.
4.5. Nice.
I have Spanish, English,
Yes.
Portuguese, Italian, a little bit of French. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah, because when I moved to Italy, I first lived in Parma, which is a homeland for from, you know, Parma ham,
Oh, Parma. Yeah.
pasta barilla and all that. But it's also, they've got this tradition because Maria Luigia lived there, the Duchess, and so they are very connected to Paris and the French language. So I thought,
Okay.
I want to learn French, so I did a couple of years of French. Yeah, but
Nice.
not
No. Okay.
which one
It's
was
a language that's on my list.
It's on your list. Yeah, it is lovely.
Yeah.
Which one was the hardest language for you to learn?
I mean, no, I didn't find it. No.
No?
No, I think if I had, for example, if I had to learn German, like as I said, I'm in the northeast, so we are pretty close to the border. And sometimes we go to Austria, and also there's an area here in Italy on the mountains where they speak. It's not pure German, but it is okay. They speak also German there a lot, and not far from here, there's a holiday. There's a series of camping sites where people from Germany and Austria come for their summer holidays. And when you go there, everything is in German, so the menus and everything.
Yeah.
And it's not far from here, it's like an hour from here. And I think that one would be. I tried learning it with Duolingo, but I thought it's too different. I don't know why. I mean, yeah. I think probably
It's very, very different.
It's very different.
Very different from the other languages you've got. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So. Also English is different from Spanish and Italian and Portuguese, but maybe because I learned it from when I was a child, maybe I didn't even notice it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I as I say, I tried with Duolingo to learn German, and I realized that it could be hard to take it seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And from your border hopping, you went to England. How long were you there for?
For a year.
Just for the 1 year. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
For a year. I stayed there. I went to London first,
Yeah.
and then it was lovely but expensive, as you know.
Yes.
So I thought I need to cut down on costs, and also because I wasn't working or anything, so I wanted to stay for as long as I could. So I went to Oxford, and which was a place I had been, and I loved it, and I thought, well, this is the right size for me. Also because you could, walk or ride your bike everywhere. And so I moved, and it's very close to London, so I moved to Oxford. And then spend the rest of the time there.
Yeah. Great. I asked because I did a similar thing when I left New Zealand. I stopped in England, but my stop in England was for quite a few more years than yours. I ended up, the plan was for only 1 year, but I ended up there for 10. So that's why, yeah.
I want to ask you about your working experience in Italy, because I know that at first you were teaching English, right? You were working as a teacher, and then eventually you moved on from teaching and started your own business as a consultant. So we would like to know a little bit more about that process and how, the challenges that you had to face as a business owner, not being Italian.
Yeah, good question. Okay, yeah. So yeah, when I moved and started and thought, well, I'm gonna, get a job, and I came across this huge obstacle, which was the fact that I wasn't a native speaker, and all the schools here, the language schools, they still want, native speakers, and so that was shocking. I couldn't quite understand why. I was like, oh, I've got all the qualifications and I've got the experience and I worked abroad, blah blah blah. Still, and then so then I found a job. They tried to convince me to change my name. I didn't. So in the end, they accepted. and
change it to what?
Jane.
Oh wow! Okay.
From Gina to Jane. Yeah, and
wow.
Yeah, they wanted me to change it from Gina to Jane, and it was all kind of shocking. So looking for a job, being rejected because of the nationality, and then when I finally find something and they accept it, just before starting the lesson, say, you need to call yourself Jane, not Gina, please. I was like, how can you ask me that now? So, and then I have to say, kind of you know, it took me by surprise, of course, and I thought about it, but then I thought, well, this is not going to last, you know. Las mentiras tienen patas cortas, you say in Spanish. If you lie, you know, they will find out. I was like, no way. And it was also a question of identity. And then I thought, what do I have to be ashamed of? You know, just like, no way. But anyway, so I stay in that job, and then, you know, of course, then people get to know you, and they see, you know, that you know what you're doing, that, you know, I wasn't just an entertainer, but I was actually a teacher, knew what I was doing, and it was getting the students to progress and achieve results and all of that. But at some point, I thought, well, I was just going to change. And then before becoming self-employed, which is now, I moved into teacher training, and then into educational publishing as an educational consultant. So I stayed there for many years. And again, there was a problem because the last publisher I worked for, which is the market leader here and globally, I remember someone said to me, not from the publisher, but someone that knew them, and it was an agent, said, they will never get you because of, you know, the surname that you have, and, you know, all the consultants are native speakers and you're not one, blah, 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 blah. I was like, I'm gonna apply. I don't care. Because I knew I was applying for a position with a British publisher, and I knew that, you know, people in the UK think in a different way. So I said, well, let's see if, you know, if I'm wrong or if I'm right. And I got the job. I mean, they accepted the application, then I went through an interview, and I got the job. So I stayed there, but then I had to deal with teachers, Italian teachers in state schools, because I was a consultant. So for the whole 13 years, I always had the same question. Oh, so you're not British, so you're not English, and how come? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, but, you know, after a while, I got used to it, and yeah. And after that, I decided to, you know, to change again and use my experience in English language teaching, sales, marketing, and found this gap, let's say, where, you know, I could contribute, and so it's ELT marketing, so marketing for language schools, and so far so good, I have to say. So it's because obviously I'm not teaching. So it's probably a solution. However, just after I left the previous job and before deciding to go self-employed, I had a couple of interviews, and with one publisher, you know, no problem. Also because they knew who I was, and so they didn't ask me anything about, you know, where are you from or whatever. With the other one, the very first question was, are you a native speaker? So I guess, you know, that would have been, again, and after so many years, a problem. It's always like a thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how deeply rooted this question or this problem is, of this desire for native speakers.
I think so. In over 20 years, do you think that it's changing? Do you think that things are changing, making progress, even if it's slowly, you know, happening? Or do you think that it's still like there hasn't been much change regarding to native speakerism in Italy?
I can notice a change. For example, people talk about it more openly. I remember years ago, there was a book. I think that was the first. Can't remember the name of the author, sorry, or can't remember anything. But I remember that book. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God. And that was like, bang, you know, there was this book facing, you know, the challenge and the discrimination around native speakerism. And I think that opened the discussion. And then gradually, people started to talk more and more and more and more. It got to levels of like even conferences like IATEFL or, in important places where
Right.
there are decision makers and influencers. So it is widely addressed. And another thing I have noticed as well is that when you talk on a more confidential, at a more confidential level with language school owners, they admit that there's no sense, to keep this idea of native
Right.
speakerism. So I can see a change. We're not where we should be, mainly because I think there are two parts of the equation. One is the industry, and now the industry is aware, they have understood, and there are many factors there that is in favor of ending native speakerism, although we are not everyone is converted, but we're at a good place. Whereas on the other hand, we have the market, and the market means the students, the parents, and that's where we haven't really managed to change or at least make them think or raise awareness about the fact of how wrong native speakerism is. And it's also against their own interest, because, for example, and that's
Absolutely.
connected to what I do in terms of marketing, I can see, so if you look at a series of for example, ads from language schools, and you have the series language schools and the cowboy schools, okay, employing tourists instead of teachers, they all have the same point of, like, we have native speakers, teachers, and they all put themselves at the same level, but some will have qualified teachers, the others will have tourists, okay, or travelers, globetrotters.
Right.
And so as a language learner or a parent of a language learner, they all cost more or less the same. And so I'm spending my money on a course that is not really getting me anywhere, because what happens with a globetrotter or a tourist is that they will try to entertain you, like, telling you stories about culture or playing music, or I don't know, or maybe just vaguely following the course book, but they are not prepared to help students move on. And what I mean is that if the class is a difficult class, they cannot manage the class normally, and if the student has a learning disability, they won't identify it, and if they are told, they will know what to do or how to adapt the materials, how to give feedback, all the things around teaching the language. They don't have that.
Right.
So if the term is used just because people think that having a native teacher is the solution, and the schools keep using it, it is negative for the user. And very often they may realize this like later, after they have spent lots of money and time, wasted money and time, with and again, I mean, this is not, we're talking here about qualified and non-qualified teachers. Let's put it that way. It's not a question. I have nothing against native speaker teachers, of course, but is the term that is the idea. So that is so. In October, first week of October, I've been invited by it's an agency. They have a podcast as well, but it's for Italians and about everything that is around Italy. And now they're having a series where they're chatting with consultants, and they invited me to participate. So that's going to be an opportunity for me to touch on this, and
on the subject, and
Excellent.
start
Great.
spreading the news. Start bring this to the table, because it's not easy. I try to approach to talk about this topic with a magazine, about school magazine for Italian schools, but they don't want to hear, because even people in education, the Ministry of Education, they have that misconception of native speakers, which is it's unbelievable because, you know, on one hand, European Union, you know, has this law about it's against discrimination against ethnicities or nationalities, and then you get a state school requesting for a native speaker teacher.
Yes.
You know, yeah. So it's wrong. Yeah. But yes, I mean, I think things will change. They are changing. We're probably halfway there, I should say.
Yeah.
Better than many years ago.
the more we can do in terms of talking about it, like you said, like you've got coming up, writing about it, sharing about it, the more it'll help. But yeah, it's it never ceases to amaze me when this problem raises its head.
But congratulations on your hard work. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, besides obviously your fantastic job as you know, with your marketing company, which I think it's fabulous. I love it. I really admire your work. Thank you for you know, speaking up about it, because it's important, and it's, I think it's fair to educate people about this topic, because many people don't really know about it. You know,
Yeah,
they
they
don't
don't
think about it.
exactly. They don't know it, don't think, or they have the wrong idea.
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and with the language schools I work with, I'm pretty clear that, you know, how I think about it, and that's when we have these conversations, and then they admit that they know. Sometimes they don't know how to word it. So you see, at the end of the day, the problem is not a problem. I mean, it's something very simple. So, for example, finding their qualities and understanding their strengths and communicating that. So you actually don't need to rely on native speakerism to promote your courses. Okay, and actually you're not promoting, because you think you're promoting, but you are putting yourself at the same level of your competitors. So that you look at the ads and they all say exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not differentiating, and in a crowded market, you need to differentiate. So you know, when you sit down with the school owner, it's like, okay, we go through an analysis to find out their strengths. You know, amazing things come out, and you can use that, you know, in your website. You can use it in your social media, in your Facebook ads, and you know, and they stand out because something different.
True. Yeah. All right. I have a question. I want to know, if you had the chance to go back in time and talk to the Gina from 20 something years ago, what would you do differently through this process? Because it's been a journey. It's been a fantastic journey for you. Would you do anything differently? What would you do?
Interesting. I would be, I don't know, there's so many things. Let me think. I think I worried a lot when, you know, 20 years, more than 20 years ago, I worried a lot. So I would tell that Gina to believe in herself a bit more. Yeah. I think it took me many years to believe in myself.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say that's the biggest one. So believe in yourself. Don't doubt so much. Be more confident. Yeah. And I think what undermined that, especially when I came here, because it was exactly this thing about not being a native speaker, and just like for me it was like everything collapsed, because, you know, after studying so many years, you know, not only the language, you know, I had my qualification, my degree, all the things that you can think of, spending so much on you know, being ready and professional, and then just being ignored. That was something that made me doubt a lot.
Yeah.
I just want to know, what language do you speak at home? Do you speak Italian?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
With your children?
We speak Italian. Well, I tell you what, I speak I speak Spanish with my kids, but I have realized that I'm mixing Italian. I'm inventing it's Italian sometimes. I just one day I realized that it's like I do a milkshake with Spanish and Italian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I speak with them in Italian, in Spanish, and with my husband in Italian. So there are some. It's a bit weird because if there are the four of us, I will be speaking. If the message is for all of us, I would say that in Italian. If I'm talking only to them and my husband is there, I'm going to speak in Spanish. And if I speak to my husband or to my kids, it's in Italian. So you see, it's like, and then I would pick up a call in English. And it's like,
Yeah.
and then when people say, but in Italian, I have this problem with the doubles. I can't recognize doubles. It's like they don't. So I decided that I would, I won't worry about the doubles. So I like, but you don't say the doubles correctly. I say, yeah, but I speak more than when I have got all these languages in my head. Forgive me.
Right.
Something people don't understand. That's a beautiful thing. I think it's wonderful that you're able to do that with your kids, and being able to teach them that beauty of languages and how they can just communicate in so many ways. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think obviously, there was a time that I was not sure whether to continue to speak them in Spanish, because I couldn't see any results. I couldn't see any progress. They didn't talk to me in Spanish. And then I thought, hang on a minute, why am I doing this? I mean, it's, one day we'll go to you and we have friends and we have family and friends, and you're not gonna, how will they communicate with their grandmother or their aunt and cousin? So I kept, talking, reading, singing, and everything. Watching films and cartoons in Spanish. And then my son, he started to speak every now and then. When he wants something, he will say that in Spanish. But when we went to Uruguay, my daughter finally started speaking in Spanish, and for them it was like they clicked. They realized that they could communicate with all the people, understand most of it. So they came back feeling, motivated, which was good.
Absolutely.
And the babysitters I had, they also learned Spanish indirectly. I remember the first babysitter, first time when I said, just before going to work, I said, well, if he says latte, it's latte, milk. If he says this, is this, is this. And she was like repeating. Just like, because we weren't sure which language the kid will use.
Yeah.
But because they would listen to me, the first one was a lady. She was quite mature, and she picked a lot of Spanish, and the second one too. Yeah.
Good for them. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for me. I don't know, Daniel, about you. If you want to say anything before we say goodbye to Gina.
No, I think it's Gina. It's been amazing having you on. So many similarities with my story that I can relate to. It's beautiful to hear your take on the adventure, and so many differences as well, which is really nice. Always really nice to learn about, find out about. So I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for the space, and also thank you for sharing the stories, because we sometimes, as you said at the beginning, sometimes we think our story is just our story. It's a small story, it's an unimportant story, but sharing the story has a dual effect. It's quite healing for yourself.
Right, exactly.
Also very often encouraging for those that are going through similar situations. So maybe the Gina listening 20 years ago, listening to something like this, go, so there is hope. So you can do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so it's super helpful, I think, and I hope that you make a difference in many people's lives with your podcast.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So much.
Yeah, thank you, and I hope so also. Yeah, great.
All
Thanks.
right. Well, everybody, thank you for watching. And remember, you need to follow if you don't want to miss any stories. Yeah, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon with our next story. Bye bye, everybody.
And
Bye.
stop picture before you go.